let's dive into this transhumanist agenda. So do you think it's a worldwide thing, or do you think it's mainly on the Western?
It's definitely global, but it's not affecting places that aren't first world westernized places. Like all the colleges have become like, I don't even know what to call them. The truth is they're like some sort of weird anti-creation. Encourage people to think that they're not a male or not a female. There's a real, true biologic reason all this is happening, and it's the acceptance and it's the promotion.
All right, guys, Jay Campbell here. You've been going wild on Twitter, my man. Thanks for coming on.
What's up, Sean? How you doing, brother? I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you.
Yeah, I really appreciate you exposing some things that, the public isn't even aware about. What drove you to start talking about these subjects?
So, I would say that for the last 30 years of my life, I've been a seeker in a lot of different ways. I've obviously, people know me, quote unquote, from the internet, from my health stuff. Obviously, I was the guy that wrote the 2 #1 selling books all time on therapeutic testosterone usage. And then I got into peptides because I was using peptides at the same time I was using testosterone. But using those substances really, I think, allowed me to elevate my consciousness, raise my vibration.
Wow.
And so I really, and I could talk about that, but I really started to make an effort into seeking out the understanding of like why we were here, like what's really going on. You recently had Billy Carson on, and Billy and I are good friends. And he talks about a lot of the stuff that I would like to talk about, but because I'm so involved in the health world, I don't talk about it as much. So, if we talk about it here today, I'm happy to. But Billy and I are we have the total same jam and the same mindset as far as talking about that stuff.
Yeah, there does seem to be a disconnect with the medical community and spiritual, right? Because it's
sure.
evidence-based with medical people.
Yeah.
So how do you walk that line?
It's a good question. There's truthfully a lot of people in the medical space called allopathic medical, which I label sick care or illness medicine. A lot of those folks now are starting to look the other way because of what happened during the years, and, with all the stuff with the V and all that stuff. The cool part is that many of them, which again I call healers, and by the way, I label allopathic medicine or sick care, and I compare it with what I call health optimization, right? So health optimization people in the medical space are really not dealing with insurance subrogation. So it's mostly just out-of-pocket cash, hormone optimization, peptides, bioregulators, whatever it is, but that's kind of how they're separate. Whereas sick care medicine is really just insurance subrogated, this is my copayment and this is what I can do. And obviously, as you know, those folks mostly just write prescriptions of big pharma medications for whatever ailment, and they never treat the root cause. It's always the Band-Aid of the symptoms.
Never. And now I just found this out last week. So by the time a baby is 1 year old, they're getting 40.
So it's the most insane thing. So we could talk about that. Let's talk about that. So when I was 24 years old, actually 25 years old, I started seeing a chiropractor because my low back started breaking down from playing basketball. And he just, one day I'm in the office, this is a true story, it's crazy. He just comes into me and he says, here, this book, something told me to give you this book. And he just hands it to me. I've known this guy for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And it was called The Sanctity of Human Blood. And I'm like looking at the book, looking at him. I'm like, bro, what is this book about? Why are you giving this to me? He goes, somebody told me just to give it to you, and I'm just trusting my intuition. So anyway, I said, okay, cool, man. I took it home and I read it. And it was this book that was written literally in the late 80s. And it was like the world's leading pathologists had gotten together to say that all are a scam.
Wow.
And that they could prove, and again, these were very scientific, principled back people and medical people. And so I read the entire book, and then at that point, 26, 27 years old, I was like, and I didn't have children or anything, I wasn't even married, but I'm like, there's no possible way that my children will ever be vaccinated. And so I just became this like champion of like teaching people, not proselytizing or preaching, but if they ever asked me about it, I would tell them, well, actually, are a scam, and here's why. And then I had the science, right? So I always knew. But then obviously fast forward to all the stuff that's happened, right?
Crazy.
But I kept my children who are 16 and 14 years old, they've never had a single shot.
Incredible. The hospital gives you a lot of slack though, right?
Dude, if I told you the story, I don't want to get into it on the podcast, but on the first child born, it was at not Christ Hospital, but Huntington Hospital, Huntington Memorial in Pasadena, California, where my daughter Alex, who's 16, was born. I had already signed the paperwork. And by the way, this is back in 2008 in California, where you could just flip the paper over and say, I have a religious exemption.
Oh, okay.
Right? But they would still pressure you. Like they would show up in the hospital as the baby was born, and there would be somebody there and they wanted to give you a shot. And I just remember like, this is not happening. What's going on? And there was a guy that showed up to give her shot. And I was like, you don't understand. This is not going to happen. But there's a lot of pressure that parents face in the hospital when they're having children about. Like you just said, 40 now. I mean,
40. It keeps going up.
Imagine what they're doing. And truthfully, again, we can get into this as we go deeper in this podcast, but it's all about consciousness suppression. That's what do. The vaccines are literally changing the energy field of the baby. And, obviously there's all these different triggers. People talk about autism and all these other, autoimmune things that stem from it. But really what it's about is changing that energy field of that child so that that child has some form of trauma from the or some form of autoimmune, eventually commutative disease that will show up in their body.
Wow, that's interesting. So is autism partially caused by energy field interference?
100%.
That's interesting.
Literally 100%.
So it's just disrupting the energy, and then the brain doesn't know how to comprehend it?
Yep. And there's some people that will tell you that, it's autism is a compensation effect from that, right? Because obviously some people who are autistic, we all know them, are extremely bright.
Yeah.
Super left brain thinkers, very scientific, can memorize things. I mean, obviously you think of Rain Man, Dustin Hoffman and stuff, that movie, but that's basically what it is. Yeah. And and really all autoimmune disease, dis-ease is a form of energy field disruption.
I wonder what's going to happen, because the way it's rising with autism and mental disorders, everyone's going to have it at a certain point if it keeps up like this.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, it comes down to, again, anyone can heal themselves. It comes down to inner work and, understanding like everything is found within. You can heal the root cause of your issues. Obviously, there's medicines, there's peptides, there's bioregulators, there's supplements, there's healthy nutrition. All those things can help, but like it comes down to like, I am not looking for an external savior. I can heal myself. I just have to do the research and find people that can help me on that path.
Yeah. So did you have testosterone issues when you were younger? Is that why you dove into this?
So good question. So at 29, I got kicked in the testicles playing basketball and had no idea. Didn't know anything about therapeutic testosterone. Was always into biohacking and stuff like that. I have a background in nutrition and actually molecular biology, is a minor in college, but just was fascinated with the human body. But I got kicked in the testicles playing basketball at 29, checked myself out. You know what happens. And literally, 4 to 6 weeks later, might have even been 5 or 6 weeks later, I just started feeling run down and devastated. So I went to my PPO doctor at the time. I was 29. I was living in LA. I was working for the Los Angeles Times as a classified advertising salesperson. And just, as I always say, there's no coincidences in the universe, only synchronicities. The guy just recommended me to an endocrinologist. He said, this is not right. You should be more healthy than that. So anyway, that guy was a guy by the name of Dr. Raymond Scruggs. He tested me and I had low testosterone. And he said to me, he goes, look, he says, I can put you on a therapeutic course of testosterone. And within 7, 8, 9 weeks, you'll be right as rain. But before you do this, go home and talk to your fiance, who was about to be my wife. And I was, Sean, 1 month from turning 30. And so I did, and we didn't have children at the time. And she was like, yeah, let's do it. We're both smart people. Let's see what happens. And so I went on therapeutic testosterone. And 7 or 8 weeks later, when I went back to see him, he's like, okay, so we're going to come off. And I was like, whoa, bro, we're not coming off of this. This is life-changing for me. Like, I went from like feeling run down to feeling like Superman.
Wow.
So at that point, he's like, okay, no problem. This is what you're going to have to do if you want to keep your fertility. And so, I started using like HCG and ancillary medications. But over the next 10 years, I just became this like super student of learning about therapeutic testosterone. And that at the same time, there was not a lot of information out there. At that time, the internet was just starting to bustle up. This is like late 90s, early 2000s. And the information you would find on like anonymous forums and stuff like that. A lot of bodybuilding forums, a lot of performance enhancement forums. And at the same time that I was learning about therapeutic testosterone, I was also learning about peptides. So I finally, 10 years later, 11 years later, people would meet me and they'd be like, it was always one of two things. They'd be like, wow, you look so good. You're so physically impressive. What do you do? And I say, oh, I use therapeutic testosterone. And it would be like steroids, or it would be like, wow, that's fascinating. Tell me more.
Yeah.
So eventually that's fascinating. Tell me more people won out, and they were like, you should write a book on this. And fast forward, a very long story. I did write a book, and it came out in 2015, and it blew up. It was also at the same time that Amazon was starting to become really big in the book publishing space. And so the book did really, really well. It led me to write 6 more books since then. They've all been like international bestsellers. I've written the main book, or the biggest book that people know me, was from 2018. It was called the TOT Bible. And that was the second book on testosterone. But that's still is the world's leading #1 selling book of all time on using therapeutic testosterone. But then from that book, I wrote books on fasting. I wrote books on fat loss. And then I wrote a book on peptides, which came out in 2023, at the very beginning of 2023. And that's now the #1 selling book ever on peptides.
Incredible.
Right? Yeah, so all of this stuff I learned as what I would call an OG biohacker in the early 2000s.
Yeah, and I saw on your Twitter you went after Huberman for his take on peptides, right?
Yeah, well, not really his take, just kind of and I have respect for him, but just that he's not really a real hardcore user like long term. He's dabbling in them, and again, he's been honest about that.
Right. Is it true Ozempic is a peptide?
Yes, it is. It's considered a GLP-1 peptide. There are three. Well, there's multiple, and GLP-1 peptides, by the way, have been around for a long time. They started using them, like diabetes doctors started using them in 2006, 2007. I'm actually friends with some of the world's leading GLP-1 peptide doctors.
He is really good at fear mongering.
Exactly.
Where do you consume your health news from?
Most of my health news comes from just my own personal experience. I have a big private insider group of people that are some of the world's leading biohackers, and so we're all kind of like guinea pigs and self-experimenting.
Brian Johnson's?
Essentially, yeah. I wouldn't call Brian Johnson one of those folks. I know that he spends a lot of money and attempts to...
$2 million a year.
Yeah, to biohack himself. But, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have been in the game for 20, 25, 30 years like myself who have really, through the test of time and a lot of experience, tried everything and kind of have a better idea.
Yeah.
The internet is so full of people who are like Johnny come latelys, just come into the spot and start talking about stuff. But, I prefer to get my information from people I've been working with for 25, 30 years. And there's a lot of them, thankfully, too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, hardcore, underground people who've been in the space, quote unquote, whatever you want to call it, biohacking, human performance enhancement, who really know their stuff, but they don't have the audiences and the followings that some of the, more what I would call Johnny come latelys do. So I kind of get my information from, I'd say, all of that.
I love that. There's a lot of drama in your space, man.
There is.
People go after Gary Brecka a lot.
Yeah.
See people going
I saw
after
Gary. It's funny, like Gary and I don't know each other. We know of each other.
Mm-hmm.
But, I was actually just talking to a mutual friend about like us doing a podcast together. And then literally I see him on yours. So I was like, wow, that's cool. But yeah, Gary seems like a really interesting guy. And I've heard really good things about him. But I think him and I having a podcast together would be really awesome for the public because we can talk about a lot of very deep things.
Yeah. He's impacted my health for the positive, but I see him get so much criticism online. It's nuts to me.
Again, there's hate, man. There's a lot of people that hate. The bigger you get, the more personality, the more people find out about you, you're going to have people that are going to attack you.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you need a lot of money to take peptides on a daily? Do you take it daily or?
You don't need a lot of money to take peptides. So that's a great question. So I think there's two camps, right? And I think I'm probably the face of the people that represent or for people that actually want to do it themselves. And then the other camp is people that want to have their doctors do it, right? And I'm totally in support of both sides. Letting doctors create your peptides, reconstitute your peptides, mix your peptides, and send you your shots is definitely more expensive than doing it yourself.
Got it.
But if you do it yourself, you can just access research chemical peptides, which are ubiquitous. They're everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They're not as much in Canada and the Eurozone as they are in the States, right? But they're available. But if you do it that way, you can absolutely have an amazing world-class body and spend less than $300 a month.
Got it. Oh, that's cheap.
Yeah.
Wow.
But if you get them from a doctor, which obviously they're marked up through big pharma, compound pharmacies and all that, and then they also make it easier because they usually reconstitute your peptides, which means you're taking a vial of peptide powder and having bacteriostatic water, or what is called injection solution, placed in there for you, and then they also will give you syringes with the actual milligram or microgram dosage amounts. Versus doing it yourself, you have to learn all that on your own.
Got it.
A lot of people say, oh, it's so expensive to buy peptides or whatever. Well, yeah, if you're going to get them from a doctor, and that might cost you $2,000, $2,500 if you're going to use everything. But if you learn how to do it yourself and take ownership, again, what I like to say, become the proactive scientist of your own health, it's easily affordable to anyone, middle class America to paraprofessionals. It's not expensive.
That's cool. Now the supplement space is getting a lot of heat right now because some of the brands are using poor quality ingredients, just heavy metals. Is it similar with peptides where there's cheaper brands trying to make a lot of profit?
It could be. Buyer beware, as I always say. The supplement industry is wholly unregulated. The peptide space is wholly unregulated. However, there are companies that do sterility process and control and also do what are called basically 99% tests from independent research labs, right? Who will verify that the contents of the actual peptide or the supplement is exactly what they claim it to be.
Got it.
So if you're going to choose a supplement manufacturer or company or a peptide, especially a research company, make sure you choose one that absolutely verifies all their label claims.
100%. Yeah, I pay double the price for third-party tested supplements 100%. Now because I used to cheap out on them. A lot of people do, but it's not always the best move.
That's the problem. Again, when you're talking about a wholly unregulated industry. And so if you don't do that, it is buyer beware.
Yeah.
And one good advice too is like if it's a supplement company or a research chemical company, if they've been around for 10 plus years, 20 plus years, you're safer to purchase those than you are of like the fly by night guys who have the superstar deals on like GLP-1 peptides.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, again, buyer beware. But yeah, as long as they're third party research tested, you're going to be in a good place.
Absolutely. Are certain states still trying to ban peptides?
Dude, everyone's trying to ban peptides. I mean, the FDA in September of last year, I think it was September 29th, classified 26, it's somewhere between 26 and 28 peptides, which, by the way, are all the ones that people use and find value and therapeutic value from. They classified them as a classification 2, which means can cause harm or may be dangerous. And so a lot of compounding pharmacies pulled their peptides off their shelf, but there's obviously a lot of what I would call rogue and renegade, courageous compounders are like, you know what, we have thousands, if not millions of patients that are using our products and getting therapeutic benefit. We're not taking it off. I mean, there's actually compound pharmacies that are suing the FDA over the ruling, right? So it's kind of like a stand. And like I said, it's, again, peptides bioregulators, it's the crypto right now of healthcare because it does represent totally decentralized healing.
And you said earlier peptides and testosterone helped you raise your consciousness levels.
100%. And what I mean by that, to really verify that, is it's part of the mind, body, spirit, soul alignment, right? So if you can optimize your hormones, okay, and get to a place where you're balanced and centered and you feel amazing, that's going to automatically elevate your consciousness because every single day you're going to be in service. Your goal is to wake up and like, how can I help people? Right? And so it's not easy. It's not, I mean, you already know this from all the people that come on your podcast, and you have an amazing podcast, by the way. But they're constantly talking about the environmental degradation, right? I mean, we're under siege from the water, from, I mean, the plastics. I mean, you look at the stuff you and I are drinking out of right now. I mean, you can't avoid all of this onslaught from the modern day or, industrialization, whatever you want to call it, modern day living in urbanized centers. So the only thing you can do is take obviously amazing care of your physical vessel.
Yeah.
Right? Like Billy was talking about that when you had him on, but like, the truth is like the more you control and take ownership of your physical health, the easier it is for you to align yourself for spiritual reception.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think most people, the ancients, yogis, I mean, anybody who's ever really looked at, the mind, body, soul alignment, like it's very difficult to be spiritual and to be quote unquote connected to source consciousness if you are physically a disaster.
And what's your opinion on the vegan diet? Because a lot of people that are spiritual tell you to switch to vegan, right? And it actually suppresses your power if you're eating meat. Do you agree with that?
So this is what I say about veganism. So anybody can do whatever they want, right? But from a spiritual standpoint, if you're going to say to me that eating plants is higher vibrational than eating animals, that's nonsense because all life is vibrating and all life is sentient. So when we get into the hyperdimensional control system, I'll talk to you about the 7 densities, but basically rocks are vibrating, this table's vibrating, plants are vibrating, everything is conscious, everything is sentient. So you can't quantify that eating meat is, more damaging than eating plants because the plants feel you biting into it just as meat does.
Wow.
But if a human being wants to choose to be only eating plants, that's fine, but you have to understand as a physical avatar being, you got to get enough cofactors, protein, essential amino acids, lysine, minerals. There's a lot of things that you cannot get from just eating plants.
Right.
Okay. And then the other thing is, and obviously, all the smart people that are, carnivores and people that, and that side of things, they talk about how the human digestive tract has evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. Right. So if you're going to only eat plants, when you have a genetic background, epigenetic and genetics matter, but your epigenetic, your evolutionary biological ancestors were eating meat, it's going to be pretty hard for you to stop eating meat all of a sudden and just start eating plants without having downstream effects. And again, the downstream effects of being vegan for a long time are numerous. I mean, they've been reported. People have brain issues. If you're going to be vegan, just to end it, it's cool. But make sure you're getting enough of the protein that you require. Make sure you're getting the B vitamins. Make sure you're getting the cofactors. Most people who choose to be vegan are eating, GMO crap.
Beyond meat.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like it poison, And so the truth is like I'm really cool with people who choose to not eat meat. I think that's awesome. But just if you're going to do it, make sure you do it right.
Beyond Meat did a phenomenal marketing campaign when it first came out.
Game changers.
I mean,
the whole thing.
That was before the seed oil craze, but that stuff's terrible for you.
Yeah, no, it's absolute poison. And even all the bodybuilders that were in it, some of those guys I know and I've known from past, they were just paid to say what they said.
Yeah, for sure.
It was a total scam. And even all the pro athletes that were paid off, to speak about that. Because there was some guy did a documentary on that, and he followed all them around, and they all gave up after 6 months.
Yeah.
If they even did it at all.
For real.
Right.
I know you're a hooper, and I know Chris Paul is vegan, but he gets injured every year, dude.
Well, I mean, look at his last 4 years of his career. I mean,
He's just getting injured.
I mean, he's still playing, right? And that's awesome. I mean, to be a 39-year-old professional basketball player and be a 6 foot or 6'1" guard is insane. But at the same time, yeah, he's not playing at the level that he once played.
Yeah, I think the body's just more weak, right?
Yeah, I'm sure you could correlate it to his veganism. Yeah, there's 100%. And again, I don't want to get into an argument or debate that, you know, people can't do veganism correctly or be a vegan and do it correctly. But again, most people don't. Mm-hmm. And it is true that from the brain standpoint, you're going to function better. Again, from an evolutionary biologic standpoint, you're going to function better with some form of animal protein. And it's, again, all the cofactors, the creatine, the lysine, the B vitamin, the methionine, all of that stuff affects the brain function.
Wow.
And when you're not getting it, you're going to have a deficiency. And whether it shows up in 3 months, 3 years, or 10, you'll eventually see it.
Yeah, I had, so I did Gary's 10X Health blood test.
Sure.
I had so many deficiencies. It was crazy.
Dude, everybody did.
And I was 26.
Yeah. I mean, but living in this environment that we're living in, you're in Vegas, I live in Tampa. If you're in a major city with more than 1 million people, you're under a contamination zone. Your body is under siege. Your endocrine system, your biological system functioning, all of your synaptic, your serotonergic, your dopaminergic brainwave paths, all of that stuff is under siege.
Wow.
So how are you going to, again, offset it unless you live a very clean lifestyle? And, you know, I have fundamental principles that I teach people and stuff like you have to live insulin controlled, right? You have to regulate your insulin signal. Mm-hmm. You know, people that are constantly eating, you know, GMO food, you know, high fructose corn syrup, foodstuffs, again, you know, crappy stuff that they just get from instant grocery stores or, you know, Instacart or wherever they're getting their food. I mean, that's going to destroy your insulin signal.
Right? My insulin was a little high too on the blood test.
Yeah, dude. You know, A1C. So, I mean, like there's supplements you can take. There's medications you can take to regulate it. But then obviously the next thing is, especially for men nowadays, is like you got to make sure your testosterone levels are good, right? And free testosterone is more important than your total testosterone levels. And obviously I'm a very big advocate for therapeutic testosterone, but there are other ways, especially when you're younger, that you can modulate your lifestyle so that you can keep your free testosterone higher. But it is getting harder and harder. Yeah. You know, because right now, like the birth rate's the lowest it's ever been. For couples who are in their 30s and even early 40s, attempting to have children is becoming harder and harder. Yeah. I mean, again, this is all the result of environmental contamination. And again, modern industrialized living.
It's
plastics.
gnarly.
Dude, I mean, even this, like, and this is a beautiful studio, by the way, all of this EMF, right? All this dirty electric frequency, white light, is not good for us.
Right. We got to hit the EMF mats after this.
I mean, I should literally be wearing my and I do in my studio, my Bluetooth, I mean, my blue light blocker glasses.
Dave Asprey pulled up in those.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty nuts, man.
I should have.
And the miscarriage rates, dude. I don't know if this was normal when you were my age, but all my friends are having miscarriages right now.
It's all related to the V, man.
Dude, it's crazy.
It's all related to the V, and they're blocking that. And you know, the other thing is
yeah, I think it's a mental warfare. I just found out yesterday, 1 in 4 teenage girls have thought about committing, and that's reported by the CDC. So it's probably double that, to be honest, which is crazy.
Or 3 to 4 times that.
Yeah, so at least 50% probably.
Unreal, dude.
That's nuts.
It really is. And again, it's FOMO. You know, it's like, you know, it's compare. It's, you know, they look at their phone. It's, you know, it's Instagram, it's TikTok, you know, and they're constantly comparing themselves.
Yeah.
And that's what puts them in that like feeling of inadequacy, feelings of not loving and trusting self. And again, you know, the statement comparison is the thief of all joy. As soon as you start comparing yourself to somebody else, you're done. Because now you're not thinking of yourself. You know, I don't love and trust myself because I'm comparing myself to everybody else.
Right.
And who cares? You know, one of my uncles used to say to me, he's like, is that person paying your bills? Right? So, I mean, like, who cares what they think, say, or do? But unfortunately, because of technology and social media, and again, FOMO, all these young people, especially girls, are constantly in that whole comparing.
Yeah, I thought that way for years. Public school, too, is a big proponent.
It's incredible.
Comparing yourself to the popular kids.
It's just unbelievable, man. I mean, it's hard to fathom, like, where we are now with technology. And, I mean, dude, all you have to do, you know, my wife and I checked into Fontainebleau last night, and we walked in and we were waiting to check in at the hotel, and you just look around and everybody's like this.
Yeah, they're
That's
glued.
where society is.
Yeah. Scary. Now they're going to be wearing glasses.
Dude, don't even get me going with the whole, you know, transhumanism. I mean, my God. I mean, yeah, but I mean, you know, if you're miserable, Sean, you're morbidly obese, you're insulin resistant, you feel like And we could talk about that for a second because I don't think most people understand what being morbidly obese feels like. Put it this way. It's literally like your body is having what are called cytokine storms 24/7. So you are in pain at all times, right? So like when you physically exist like that, why would you not want to put a glass thing on or be sucked up into the metaverse or chipped or whatever? Because in your physical life, you're in pain 24/7. So I can see why so many people are wanting the whole transhumanism, singularity, whatever they call the end game of like being beamed up into the cloud, because that life is better than their physical life, because their physical life is pain and hardship.
Right.
So it's like I always tell people, like, the best way to ensure that you live longest is to be the leanest. The leaner you are, statistically, the longer you will live.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, it's so hard though, again, with all the contaminants in the food and the water and the air that we breathe and the energy fields that we're constantly involved in. I mean, dude, like, people don't realize when you're driving a Tesla, if you sit in a Tesla while it's charging, you're taking years off your life.
Holy crap.
There's no protective field or, there's no Faraday cage around that energy unit in the Tesla.
Damn.
And so when it's recharging, it's just firing out dirty EMFs into your field and into that frequency.
Gosh.
So people don't know that.
Thank gosh you told me that, because I have a Tesla. I used to sit in it during the supercharge.
Everybody has Teslas, but just don't sit in it when you're charging. Yeah. I mean, truthfully, get a Beamer, but
I have a G-Wagon too, but I like the Tesla. What about those EMF chips? If you put that in the Tesla, will it help?
So, I mean, all of those things, there's a really awesome company in Southern California, Justin Franson, his company's called EMF Rocks. I'm just throwing him a shout out, but you can buy his crystal stuff and you can put them
it's a crystal?
over. Yeah, so they're like bags of crystals and they really help deaden the EMF frequency. But all of those different technologies, there's Blue Shield. I have a Blue Shield cube in my house. I recommend everybody. If you don't have one of those, you should get one of those and put it in your house immediately.
It covers the whole house?
Oh, dude, you can get the cube is like, it's the best deal in the industry. It's like $1,500 and it goes up 300 yards omnidirectionally.
Holy crap! I'm gonna get one of those.
And it completely puts a shield around you. Yeah.
Amazing.
So I mean, there's a lot of tech that's coming to shield us, but that's the thing is like we also have to be super proactive. Right? If you don't remember to do these things, like, and again, how many people, think of all the people in the world right now who are living in big cities and have commutes and are sitting in their cars working, charging their Teslas.
A lot.
Charging their Beamer, charging their electric car, whatever it is. There's a lot of amazing electric cars. They're sick, right? But you sit in there while it's charging and your body is being annihilated.
Jeez.
It's definitely lessening the birth rate because it's hitting the endocrine system.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, dude, the testosterone levels in America, male and female, this is not just a masculine or a guy thing, are in the shitter. I mean, they have plummeted, and it's from all of that stuff. The food, the EMFs, the lights. I mean, think about the people that go to a corporate office building. I mean, all these people in the casinos, and they're there 8 to 10 hours every day under this light.
And the Wi-Fi.
The Wi-Fi, the routers, 5G. I mean, all of it is not good, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is people, 3 years ago, that's conspiracy, Jay and Sean, right? But now there's PubMed research about what packet technology does to brainwaves.
Right.
So, I mean, this is not conspiracy theory anymore. So, I mean, again, when you're talking about this, because people want solutions, you and I can talk about, what's happening, but solutions are be proactive, optimize your health, change your brainwave frequency. Again, we haven't talked about mindfulness and gratitude and all that stuff, but that stuff will help you combat all of these enslavement technologies that are everywhere.
Gratitude?
100%, dude. I mean, gratitude in the morning, which again is cliche, but if you're grateful for your life, you're grateful. And again, people are like, yeah, but dude, if I do that for a week, I run out of things to be grateful to. Dude, just be grateful you can look at your fingers. Be grateful that your eyes open and that you can see. Be grateful that you can walk, that you can ambulate. Be grateful that you have people in your life that love you. I mean, I always tell people, like, gratitude is huge. Being grateful that you exist and you're alive in this incredible day and age is something to be proud of.
Yeah. I never run out of things to say. I write down 10 things every morning for the past 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that raises frequency?
100%.
That's cool.
100% it raises frequency. Yes, because when you're grateful, your energy field is expansive. And when you're expansive, guess what? You attract other expansive people.
Right.
Yeah, dude. I mean, you're living proof. I mean, look at all the people that you're meeting. Look at all the diverse people from all walks of life that you're bringing into your studio, which again is amazing. So, I mean, you create your abundance, you create your prosperity just by who you are.
Absolutely.
100%.
Let's dive into this transhumanist agenda. So do you think it's a worldwide thing, or do you think it's mainly on the Western front?
So that's a great question. It's definitely global, but it's not affecting places that aren't first world westernized places, right? So the first world westernized places are the places that they can, really institute, whatever it is they're doing, right? From the schools. I mean, dude, look at all the colleges now in the West, right? Like all the colleges have become like, I don't even know what to call them. I don't get into politics, but the truth is they're like some sort of weird anti-creation, right? It's like we want to reward people that aren't quote unquote part of male, female. I always like to call it divine masculine, divine feminine. Equal but opposite poles. We want to reward people to tell them that they're not like that. We want to, encourage people to think that they're not a male or not a female. I mean, we could talk about, there's a real true biologic reason all this is happening, but obviously there's also a sociologic reason behind it. And it's the acceptance and it's the promotion of it. Dude,
one of the girls I hooked up with in college changed her genders, and it's just crazy to me.
Dude, when I tell people that the creators and the directors and the writers of the Matrix trilogy, the Wachowski brothers, they turned themselves into women.
What?
Yes, no one even knows that. The people that built the Matrix are now women.
No.
Yes, the Wachowski brothers are now sisters.
Why would they do that?
Because it's a part of this transhumanism, ideology of like, it's crazy. I mean, I don't know how deep we can go, but I mean, nobody knows everything in third density for sure, but like I have my suspicions of like what's happening. But again, it's attack on creation. If the dark side, the parasitics, people like to call them satanics, Luciferians, whatever. If their point is to invert what is natural and true, then it's a direct attack on creation. And creation is two equal but opposite energies, masculine and feminine, right? So like when you understand the poles and you understand quantum physics and you start going down that path, but equal but opposite energies is what creates balance. Just like in Star Wars, right? You have the dark and you have the light. You've got the parasitic and you've got the expansive, right? And so the truth is, I love, my word for parasitic now is contractile. Eat, 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 right? It's just like this giant hive mind where everybody just gets eaten, They're all wishful thinkers and they're all eating each other. It's all an energy field war. But like the truth is like the universe is built around balance. So if you've got positivity and expansiveness and abundance and prosperity, you also have to have its opposite.
Wow.
You have to have parasitic. You have to have contractile. You have to have negative. You have to have, darkness. Evil is a word that we use here in third density because it kind of denotes like light, dark, evil, good. But in truth, from a multi-dimensional or a multi-density perspective, there is no evil because everything is happening as it's supposed to happen.
Interesting.
Right? And if we're beings and we're evolving, then you're going to be evil and you're going to be positive, you're going to be dark, you're going to be light. There's a spectrum, and at some point you're going to be at that level of the spectrum.
That's fascinating. So does that mean everyone cannot be successful at the same time then?
I mean, it depends on how you define time, right? Like if we go into a quantum physics discussion, time doesn't exist, right? Here in third density, it does because we define, point A to point B and there's timelines, right? But like outside of this time space, there is no time. So yeah, the answer is it's possible to do anything. All things are possible outside of this density. But right now in third density, it's kind of hard to have both.
Interesting. Yeah, there does seem to be ups and downs no matter what though.
Dude, it's part of the life. It
literally
inevitable. Is part of life. You come in as a soul, you choose your parents, you come in and, and there's a lot of reasons you choose your parents. Some of it's for DNA, some of it's for their vibratory field, some of it's for ancestral things, some of it's due to karma. But then you come in, and the great Walter Russell said the gift or the path is to the base of the jungle, back to the top of the mountain, right? So like, who knows how many lifetimes or how long that actually takes a soul to go from the base of the jungle, which is, the lowest vibratory field, all the way back up to the top of the mountain, technically where they're in the ether.
Yeah. So what happens after the top then?
I mean, it depends. I mean, I don't know if anyone truly knows. I mean, if we start talking about like 7 densities of existence, you basically fold back into source consciousness.
Whoa.
And you become, Billy was talking about, remember what Billy said to you? He said, we're all stacked atoms. If we were looking at each other, all we would really be is stacked atoms, right? So stacked atoms are really just holographic wave fractals of source consciousness itself, right? So we're all part of the one. You've heard people talk to you, because I've listened to some of your people's show, they talk about unity.
Yeah.
That's source consciousness. Each of us individually is a holographic fractal of the greater source, right? So like at some point, if you, again, are starting at the base and going back to the top of the mountain, you would essentially enfold or come back, become a part of source consciousness itself. So if we're looking at third density, so let's just talk about the densities, right? Yep. First density is inanimate, okay? Second density is animal plants. Third density is humans. Fourth density is I mean, again, and there's multiple life forms in each density, but for us to understand this right now, fourth density would literally be a physical and energetic. So you would be considered biphasic, right? So you could become physical if you came into third density, but if you're in your natural fourth density space, you're energetic.
So those are aliens, right?
Interdimensionals, hyperdimensionals, ultra-terrestrials, ETs, now they're calling them unidentified, different, beings, but yeah, essentially. Fifth density is when we go as a soul when we die, right? So that's the way station or the zone of contemplation. So when you die as a soul, you're literally going to fifth density to have your soul evaluation. There's a lot of different books that have been written about this. And at fifth density is when you're basically just in a place of contemplation. And then that's when you're going to find out whether you're going to go back somewhere. Third density, fourth density. Sixth density is energetic construct. It's just pure higher mind. You are an energy and you have ascended your soul or your consciousness to that level. And then seventh would be source.
Got it. That's God, right?
God.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So when you die in the third, you skip the fourth, you go straight to the fifth.
You go back to the fifth, right? And supposedly, and obviously, I have a lot of mentors and teachers, and I've done a lot of research and a lot of work. If you're not aware, and so this is why this podcast is so amazing today. If you're not aware that fourth density exists and you die, you can't go to fourth density because you're not aware of it consciously. So you're going to go back to third density from fifth density.
Wow.
Right? So people talk about reincarnation. People talk about past lives, multiple lives, or whatever. You will not go back to fourth density or even to fourth density if you weren't conscious of it before that past lifetime.
And that's a lot of people.
Billions.
Holy crap. And they want that, right?
Billions. So the percentage, and this is estimated, no one knows, but the percentage of people that can talk about what we're talking about right now, bro, is less than 1%.
Damn.
So to understand the laws of hyperdimensionality, you have to be, and by the way, there's tons of people that run the show here that understand all this, right? And they keep it from us. If you've watched any of Tucker Carlson's, recent interviews when they're doing the UAP phenomenon and all that stuff, and there's a lot of people that work in those special projects that know what's going on.
CIA, right? Gateway.
CIA, DARPA, Mossad. I mean, all of these, I just call them alphabets, right? Like all these alphabet agencies have people and beings of a higher, density, fourth density, call them. So to separate like good versus bad, and again, I hate using those words, but basically everything in consciousness or in life force is either service to self, which is contractile, which is I don't care about anybody else but me, or service to others, which means that you're here to serve others, right? Like that's who you do, or that's your choice as a conscious being, right? We are all in third density at birth, essentially service to self. And the reason for that, Sean, is because we have to survive. We have to eat, we have to piss, we have to right? And to do those things, we have to focus on ourselves. If we were an energy being, we wouldn't have to do any of those things. We could just sit there and observe. We're not eating. We're not having sex to propagate, right? So it's like your service to self by your very nature in third density, but you can choose through your conscious action to serve others.
Right.
And that's the separator. And I think all of us are service to self in our physical bodies for a long time until we wake up.
Yeah. That's how I lived for a while.
Exactly. Dude, all of us. All of us. I mean, I was service to self until I was 42 years old.
Wow.
I'm 53 right now, right? So, I mean, I've done a lot of work in my last 11 years. But at one time in my life, I was pure ego.
Yeah.
How much money can I make? How many nice cars, stack chips. We all go through those phases, right? But then you eventually get to a place of like, wow, I have children, or wow, there's so much more to this planet or to this existence to help and serve others. I mean, again, going back to gratitude, what's better than helping people? I always tell people, if you're at your lowest point in your life and you are so depressed or you're negative or you just feel like, go out and help someone. Go to an old person's home. Go to a Down syndrome center. Go to anywhere and just literally donate your time and your energy to helping other beings and watch how fast your energy field gets lifted.
Wow.
That happens and that works for anyone. But again, you've got to move yourself out of the feelings of negativity or depression that you're existing in. And again, it's a lot harder now because of the energy field contamination.
Right.
All, talking about women or young girls that want to kill themselves. I mean, how many people right now are depressed because they have hormonal deficiencies? When your hormones are not firing adequately, how can you feel good? And so that's, again, if you really want to look at, let's just call them the parasitics, the contractiles, the dark side, whoever, whatever they might be, it behooves them to keep us in this state.
Right.
Because now we're not productive. Now our consciousness is not expanding. And truthfully, and I'm sure you had people on your show. There was a guy that was here the other day, or I just watched his episode. He was talking about the levels of the soul and how the soul comes and experiences. I commented on your Instagram. He was a really smart guy. I forget his name, but
Sean Clayton, right?
Yeah. So there's a lot of people that are like him, like me, that understand what's going on now. And yes, the system sometimes suppresses our consciousness because like we go against like mainstream religion or we go against the mainstream narratives or whatever. But the truth is that, and again, I'm grateful for you to have me on here, that we can talk about these things now and not be suppressed. Right. But if you are dark side, whoever they are, again, call them the fourth density, hyperdimensional beings, reptilians, giants, grays. If you were them, why wouldn't you want third density human beings to be depressed all the time? Because again, you feed off of their negative energy.
Wow.
You feed off of their suffering.
Holy crap.
So that's what's going on here. That is what's going on here. And look, I'm not the first person to bring this up. You know, there are very smart people. You know, I mentor under Laura Knight Jadzik, which, you know, I've sent you her podcast. I just did 6 all-inspiring podcasts with her. She's one of the living masters on this planet right now in her knowledge. But Charles Fort, Apedia Pensky, The Fourth Way. I mean, there's, you know, conscious philosophers, the Mexican shaman, you know, the Toltecs, Carlos Castaneda, all of these people knew what was going on here. They were able, again, this is going back hundreds and, you know, probably thousands of years. And for the people that I'm not covering right now, you know, shout outs to you guys for being leaders in this, but they realized that there were beings of a higher density, again, fourth density, who were feeding off of us energetically.
Wow.
And they're feeding off of us energetically when we are negative, when we are depressed, when we are making poor choices, when we are reactive. Okay. So the key is, again, always being balanced and always being centered. And that's why I was telling you at the very beginning of the show that when your hormones are optimized, you can come from a place of neutral observation. You can sit in silence a lot easier than a person whose brain is inflamed because they're obese, insulin resistant, sick, depressed, you know, taking SSRIs, you know, taking all these big pharmaceutical poisons and evil drugs that lead you to not be able to sit balanced and centered in meditation, contemplation, introspection, grounding in nature, whatever it is. And there's many ways to get to where you're centered. But that's why they do it, because they feed off of us energetically.
That's crazy. So our energy is being siphoned.
All the time. Dude, we are literally energetic food 2 ways. A, when we're not aware that we're energetic food, which is 90% of the population. And B, when we're not in control, when we're not managing and harnessing our energy field. So like right now, me and you are very centered, very chill. Like we're talking about some crazy stuff, but right now, both of us are very centered and we're not reactive.
Right.
And so like, you know, if you were not the person that you were, and both of us are helping each other do this, because remember, when two beings of a similar vibratory field get together, we resonate. If you were not the person you were, you'd be like freaking out right now because I'm talking about crazy stuff. No, but it's true.
5 years ago, probably.
Yes. And this is most people. And that's why we can have this conversation. And I promise you, when you release some of these clips and when you release all of this, you're going to see a lot of polarization. Right. Because there's a lot of people out there that think what I'm saying is crazy. You know, the religious people, you know, the hardcore fundamentalist Christians. It's not just Christianity. It's every Abrahamic religious teaching. They're all sieves of the same shoe, right? And obviously, all religion has value. There's fundamental spiritual precepts in every religion that is amazing. But unfortunately, the dark side has co-opted, commandeered, and corrupted almost all of the religious teachings on this planet.
Yeah, they've weaponized it.
Weaponized it, right. And again, it's why? To feed off of people's sufferings. Think about just Christianity or Judaism or Islam. If we make everybody think that the only way to salvation is to, quote unquote, not be a sinner, to redeem your sins for the afterlife, then no one's ever going to love and trust themselves because they're going to be a worthless sinner. So if I'm a worthless sinner and that's my viewpoint and I walk around thinking that I'm a worthless sinner, then guess what? I don't love and trust myself and I am energetic food.
Wow.
And I'm depressed because the good is coming in the afterlife, right? So again, it's a giant mind, you know what?
Yeah.
And until people can actually get to a place where they're like, you know what? I can see that. I can use the foundational spiritual precepts that are in the religion that I was raised in. Because that's another thing, bro. Remember, we're given these things. We come out of the womb and all of a sudden we have all these, you know, cultural norms and mores and things and customs that we have to live by. You know, we didn't choose. I didn't choose to be a Catholic. whatever religion you were raised, you didn't choose.
Yeah, Christian.
Yeah. So, I mean, but these are forced upon us. At some point, we as conscious beings have a choice to not live according to the ways that we were forced to accept. Right? Now, sure, you can borrow some of the teachings. You can borrow some of the stuff that stands true. But you also have to be very, very careful and cautious because, again, a lot of it is, again, setting you up to be hyperdimensional.
That is crazy. So a lot of people will be stuck in the third dimension then.
So where we're going with this is, and again, all the ancients talk about this, is most of your listeners know what ascension is. They know what the shift is. The learnings and the mastership and knowledge that I've given is from Laura Hijacked, and she talks to these hyperdimensional beings from sixth density. They're called the Cassiopeans, and the Cassiopeans have been talking to her for 35 years. And again, all of this is in her book series, The Wave. It's fascinating. I highly recommend anybody who's listening to this podcast read that book series because it's profound. And almost all the information that she's been given over the last 30 years has been proven true, and it continues to prove true. It's unreal stuff. But The Wave is what they title the realm border crossing, which Christians and most people, of a spiritual, philosophical background know of ascension. And that is when the energy of the cosmos sweeps across this part of the cosmos or this planetary dimension or this solar system and raises the frequency of all the living beings. And you don't make it into fourth density unless you have the right constitution. So frequency. So if you're vibrating in a frequency of service to others, which is, essentially love, courage, acceptance, allowance, you'll make it. But if you're not, it's what you just said. You go back. So what if, because people talk about timelines and hyperdimensional realities and the multiverse and all that stuff. What if when that energy is coming through, and I can argue it's here now, but when it finally rolls through and everybody has to make the choice of whether they get boosted up to fourth density, ascension, or stay in third, what if there were just the Earth separated? And so there was like a quote unquote new Earth that was fourth density and a current Earth, which is what we're in right now, stay here in this way. And then, all the biblical scriptural predictions, the rapture, the end times, everything that Nostradamus wrote, all those things, what if they all came true? Because that third density Earth just continued on in its destructive path that it's in now.
Whoa.
So in truth, it's possible that those of us who raise our vibration, our frequency into quote unquote this realm border crossing, again, it's called the wave, into fourth density, become the part of the new Earth, and the third density Earth, which is what we're all in right now, just stays its same way, and it goes and it turns upside down. And whatever happens, people talk about the pole shift, tsunamis, tidal waves, geodidactic events, comets hitting or whatever, and everything just flips upside down and then it starts over.
Yeah. Matt LaCroix had an interesting theory about that. I think
so Matt's a good friend of mine. Was Matt on the show?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see it. That's awesome. Yeah.
So I think he said what was it, either 13 or 26,000 years humanity resets?
It's 26. He's right, but it's 26. It's somewhere between 26 and 27. And remember, time is dynamic because the dark side is going back and forward to change it. In fact, you probably know about the Mandela effect. That's real. So, and I can name a million Mandela effect principles, but basically the dark side and the good guys for that matter, and I probably should I should probably quantify who the good guys and the bad guys are, but the bad guys have been, from what my understanding is, going back and forth in time 76,000 years right now.
Whoa.
In Earth time. So that's why the Mandela effect exists. That's why things are bleeding out. That's why time is dynamic. I mean, it can shift, it can change. Things are happening. But from my understanding and my awareness, no matter what the bad guys do, they can't stop ascension from happening, right? So Matt's right. And it is about every 26 or 27,000 years, that energy comes and we either make it higher or we go lower.
Got it.
And going lower for us would be here. We would stay here, right? Second density, animals, plants, dude, everybody's got dogs and cats right now that are like humans, right? Guess what? They may make it to be a human the next round.
Wow.
Right? So when they go back, they go to the fifth density zone or whatever in the zone of contemplation, and, their angelic grouping or higher density consciousness beings are like, okay, dude, you made it. You're not gonna be a dog anymore. Yeah. I mean, my dog I have a pit bull, Thor, and he's like a human to me. And I mean,
same with my dog.
Bro, he comes out and meditates with me.
What?
Swear to God in my life. I have pictures and videos of it. So it's like my wife and I are joking. We're like, well, yeah, he's probably going to make it to human next round. But Matt's right. At 26 to 27,000 years, again, according to third density timelines, is when it happens. And so we're close right now. We're really close. I mean, my guess is If you look at all the transhumanists with the singularity stuff, you know, the Peter Diamandis and Ray Kurzweil, they say it's 2030, 2031 is the singularity.
Whoa, so our lifetime.
Oh, dude, I mean, if you put a gun to my head right now, Sean, I'd say it's in the next 7 to 10 years.
Holy crap.
Now, there are other people that say it's 20 years. You know, there's the people at the Diebold Foundation who say it's going to happen in 2041, right? But all the people who study the ancient texts, the philosophies, the Billy Carsons, the Matt LaCroix, the Jay Campbells, there's a lot of us of the world all would say, if you put a gun to our heads, it's going to happen in the next 20 years.
Wow. So it's either going to elevate
this close. Yeah, so you either make it or you don't. And if you don't make it, you still are a living soul, and you go back to the fifth density, or fifth density zone of contemplation, and then you wait your next assignment, but you're not progressing. Whereas if you do make it, you progress, and so that if you do go back, let's say you make it to fourth density, and then you do die, your physical body dies. And by the way, supposedly at fourth density, when you're biphasic, life is like thousands of years.
Whoa.
So when you become energetic, you're not relying on a physical vessel anymore. Right. So the physical vessel, we know, is everybody dies at like, there's some yogis living to like 125, 130, but most of us are going to die between 100 120. Right. And of course, the transhumanists, as you know, want to chip us and live us forever, but that's not organic. But the truth is that you will come back if you don't make it to the fourth and third again.
Wow.
And from what I understand, and I'm sure Matt probably talked about this, it's a do-over. So it's like Stone Age, you know, probably red sky. I mean, think about it. Earth has been nuked. Earth has been annihilated, whatever. We've had comets that bombarded it, you know, that hundreds of years, it's not even capable of sustaining life. So when you come out as another being in a physical body, you're a caveman.
Holy crap.
Neanderthal or whatever, yeah.
A lot of history's been lost.
All of it. All of it. History has been written by the winners. Yeah, and that's the other thing, too. We know they're hacking the timelines. The dark side and the good guys are going back and forth in this timeline war, again, in this essentially this war in the cosmos, which is Star Wars attempting to portray, right? You have the dark versus the light, but it's ongoing. And I would say that it's, as Matt said, or as Billy said, it's periodic. So it's just constant moving and flipping.
That's crazy.
And flipping. But you as a soul, me as a soul, all of the listeners as a soul, our job is to evolve. Right? So one of the things I wanted to say to you is like that, what is our purpose? When people say, well, what is my purpose? Your purpose is to evolve your soul, to grow spiritually, to serve others, to constantly make it from first, second, third to fourth to sixth, and then back to source. And then once you're source, who knows what happens? But I mean, I've heard stories that you could become a cosmos, you could become a nebula, you could become a star.
Matthias De Stefano has experienced it.
Yes, exactly. Right, yeah, yes, exactly. So there's a lot of people out there that know what's going on, like him, and that's the coolest part about this world right now is like if you study and you research and you do your best to serve. The other thing is about service is, and this is my opinion, the more you're in service, the more you can receive downloads from higher density.
Wow.
Right? So if every great, inventor, technological innovator in the history of third density was actually given their information from a higher calling, I mean, if you investigate most of them, they will say that is the case. I mean, look what, Tesla says. Look at the Wilbur Wright and Orville Wright, the Wright brothers that created flight say, that some being landed in their backyard in North Carolina. So, I mean, like, if you start looking into this, it's like if you're living a good, just life and you are in service to others, you will be receptive from downloads from higher density consciousness.
Wow.
Higher density consciousness is what allows mankind to continually expand. Not just consciously, but technologically.
Yeah, so people are thinking so backwards when they're thinking selfishly then.
Yes, dude. I mean, but again, it's part of the existence.
Right.
Some of my learnings are a couple things that are most important is life is nothing but lessons, right? So this is a school. Third density is a school. Learning is fun. Now, a lot of people don't label learning as fun, right? Because they label the tough. My mom died. I got a divorce. My house burned down. I lost my job. All those things are an opportunity for growth and development, but only if you label them as such. Most of us, when it happens to us, it's like negative. And then we attach to the negative energy of that event, and then it haunts us. We're traumatized by it. So the key is to not be traumatized by anything that happens to you and try to look at it, look at it from an opportunity of like, wow, I want less of this, more of that. I can grow from that, right? Because now I learn I don't want that, right? But a lot of people, they attach to the negative outcome or label it a negative outcome, and then they don't go beyond it, right? You know, you think about people who have like a sickness or a disease, and as soon as they walk into the room, they tell you about it.
Yeah.
My sciatica. I've got low back pain, or, you know, I've got this blah, 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 you know, and so it's like they're attached to their diagnosis, and their diagnosis becomes them.
Right. They manifest it.
100%. Yeah, we didn't even talk about reality creation, right? Like reality creation is 100% incumbent upon the thoughts that we think. All we are is thoughts. If source is consciousness itself, then all we are, as Billy was saying, is the thought, concept, or construct coming from our mind, right? So it's like, why would you ever think negative thoughts? Why would you ever, if you desired something, ultimately, why would you think of not having it?
Right.
And that's what most people do. They place their conscious on the not having instead of how do I get it? And taking action to get it, right? Like you think of yourself, look at what you've done in the last 3 or 4 years. You know, you took massive loving action to get here.
Yeah.
You build relationships with people. You can't do anything without first figuring out how you're going to do it, right? And then the plan materializes, but then you got to take action.
Right.
A lot of people have great plans, but take no action.
Yep.
The average person who's not in shape doesn't take action. They might desire to be in shape, but the pain of working out or the pain of doing cardio or the pain of not eating that 3 pieces of cake, you know, is strong-arming them, and they can't make the other choice, right? But the key is always to take action. So again, in this construct of third density, to manifest, it does take you living within resonance of the universe. Like the new age teaches people about reality creation wrong. And because they tell you, you know, you can have anything you desire with as long as your thoughts are to do it. But the truth is, if you're living in delusion, you're not living in actual truth. You're going to agitate the field, the source field, to create disharmony and incoherence to create reality. Whereas if you're living within your truth and there aren't levels of truth, there's only truth. If you're living in truth and you understand what's happening, then it's a lot easier for you to create a new reality because the universe will help you in the same alignment. Because the universe is coherent.
Yeah.
The universe is harmonized. You know, my statement, and again, Dr. Hawkins, not Stephen Hawkins, but the consciousness guy, I can't think of it, David Hawkins right now. His statement was, all is happening as is divinely intended. And I took that statement and I said, all is happening as is divinely intended, always and in all ways. Our resistance to that statement is futile. So everything that we create, Sean, in our life that's negative is our resistance to the energy of the frequency of source, which is everything is happening as it's supposed to. But if you think it's not, it's your resistance to that. So that really means that, like, as the world turns and as we live our lives and as we experience amazing things and things that we label not great, how do we grow from them?
Absolutely.
We either reject them or we evolve them. That's how it is. And so, like, it's key to evolve constantly and to realize that change is inevitable.
Yeah. People have victim mentalities, right?
Dude, that's the worst part about the world right now is, like, social media encourages people to be victims.
Right.
And people don't take ownership. They don't take personal accountability. They're not ready to say, like my 14-year-old daughter, total amazing little girl, but constantly plays the victim card. And I'm always saying to her, Gabby, her name is Gabriella, but I call her Gabby. I'm like, Gabby, until you realize that everything is your fault, you're not going to be successful in your life.
Wow.
Now, my wife gets mad because she doesn't like the word I use, and we're all big on conscious word languaging, but I like to say that word for her because for her, where she's at in her level of development at 14 right now, she does understand fault, right? So I want her to think that everything that happens to her is her fault. Even though you and I know it's not true, I want her to take ownership of that because now she can overcome anything.
Right.
Right? So it's like you and I, where we are in our lives right now, we're radically responsible and superlatively accountable in everything we do. Like, even if something doesn't work, right? Like last night, I would have gotten here with 3 flight cancels. I was telling your assistant, 3 flight cancels. I was going to get here last night no matter what. Didn't matter. They were all trying to book me to get here today. I'm like, I'm not missing the show. I'm going to get there tonight, right? But my conscious mind and the action that I took made me get here, and anyone can do the same thing. You just got to overcome the initial inertia, which is the resistance.
Wow.
And most people won't overcome the resistance because, again, the resistance is tough.
It is.
It's hard. Change is hard. I always laugh because the only thing that you and I know that's inevitable in third density is change. Everything is change. But so many people won't change. Most people live within a 4 to 6 mile radius of their birthplace their entire life.
Jeez.
They don't travel. They don't get out. They don't go to places. And it's like, how are you going to ever know if you don't do those things?
Yeah.
You know? And again, it's not a matter of social, economics or inequality. Anybody can travel today, bro. You know that. I mean, you could fly transcontinentally on Spirit Airlines for $299.
Yeah.
So there's nothing stopping anyone from getting out there other than their fear.
Right.
And again, the fear comes from a lack of awareness or a lack of just not knowing what's happening. And that's, going back to the whole idea of food. Until you realize that by being, quote unquote, unaware, you're hyperdimensional food, you're going to constantly be food.
Absolutely. Do you think people's thoughts have been hijacked? Because 95% of thoughts are subconscious, right?
100%. 100%. Almost everyone who's not healthy has brainwave patterning that is easily to manipulate.
Wow.
Yeah. So think about that again. If you're inflamed, your brain is inflamed. Again, let's just and I have obesity in my family, and I'm very, very compassionate about people who are obese, and I do whatever I can to help them. But like to use that because it's a good analogy. If you're obese and you're in constant pain and under attack all day long from cytokine storms, it's very easy for you to be manipulated mentally. Okay, just as a very sick person who has a lot of autoimmune diagnoses or disease is also very easy to be manipulated. So again, going back to energy fields, it's a war for energy field. Right. So one of the greatest skills and techniques or concepts that a human being can have is management of their energy field. Right. How do I harness my energy field so that A, I'm not being attacked, B, I'm not being manipulated, and C, I'm not being fed upon. Right. And the only way you can do that is A, you got to be aware that it can happen. And B, you got to be centered.
Absolutely.
Balanced. Gratitude, meditation, contemplation, introspection, sitting in stillness, listening to source consciousness, being able to receive the downloads. And again, exercise, health, using peptides, living insulin controlled, using therapeutic hormones, doing all those things only helps you to stay balanced and to stay centered. It's the opposite. Most people, when they start thinking about guys that are using hormonal optimization or all these other, medication, supplements, drugs, whatever, they think, oh, that just makes them this, that, and the other, when it's the opposite. If they're doing it correctly, it makes them centered, it makes them balanced. And it makes them able to see things, again, from a place of neutrality, a place of neutral observation. And that's, all the great sages, all the great philosophers, the Stoics, they would all say, you cannot understand until you come from a place of non-attachment or a place of, again, the observer.
Wow.
I'm sitting from a place where I don't have a right, I don't have a left. I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not evil, I'm not good, I'm not dark, I'm not light, I'm neutral. And I'm observing. And then from that observation, I'm going to take what serves me and I'm going to leave the rest.
I love it. Jay, this has been such a powerful episode. I can't wait to see the feedback on this. Where can people find you and your books?
Man, so first off, I love you, my brother. And I mean that. When I connect with people in the way that I did, you are an amazing soul. So thank you for that. They can find me on social media at Jay Campbell 333. 333 is the connection between the master teachers and mind, body, soul. And my website, which is where a lot of people find me now for peptides, hormones, biohacking information, is jaycampbell.com.
Perfect. We'll link below. Thanks for coming on, Jay.
Thank you, my brother.
Yep. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you took something from that. I'll see you tomorrow.